Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be creating two different cards, but we're going to be using a very similar design on both of them. I'm going to be using the word joy on both of the cards, and I'm going to do one landscape and one vertical, and I'm going to replace the O in the center of the joy word with a snowman. So I have the snowman from the Snow Buddy stamp set, which I think is my favorite stamp of all this year, and then I also have the snowman from the Festive Friends. So two completely different looks. One is kind of playful and fun, and one's a little bit more realistic, or as realistic as you can get for a snowman. So what I did is I just went ahead and stamped both of those out onto white cardstock, and I stamped them with Extreme Black ink, which is a Copic friendly ink. And now I'm just going to quickly go through the coloring of both of these snowmen. I used similar colors for both of them. For this guy here, because he has a lot more detail in his hat and his scarf, I used multiple colors, so I have some greens and some reds. And then in the second snowman, you'll see that I mainly use red on him and add a little bit of green just to kind of add a second color to him. So for my Copic coloring, I'm doing the same as I always do. I usually lay down a light color first just to get the paper really saturated. Having the paper saturated at the beginning is what really helps it to blend together as you add the additional colors. I'm using 4 different shades of green on this one, which is actually one more than I normally use, but I really wanted to have that really dark green color on the edges. Once I was done with the green coloring, I moved on to the red, and once again, I'm going to use 4 shades. I have my 3 main shades, and then I have one really dark red, and that's just going to add a lot of contrast to the design, which is something I've really been liking lately. I love having all of the color blended together and that pop of really dark color on the edges or wherever I want to add my shading. So I'm just going to continue coloring here until I have all the red and greens done, and then I'm going to go in quickly and add some orange color to his nose and some brown to his arms. I didn't do any shading on the arms since they are pretty thin. I just did one shade of the brown there, and then I moved on to some grays for the snowman. I usually shade in my snowmen with either shades of gray or blue aquas. The gray is a nice color to use if you're going to be putting your snowman against a blue background, which I'm going to be doing, so that's why I chose to use grays on these ones here. But if you want, you can also use really light blue colors, which kind of gives them the look of being cold. So it just kind of depends. It's personal preference, whatever color you prefer. And you just kind of want to put a little bit of color around the edges just to give the illusion of it being white. Once I had the gray shading done there, I went ahead and added the color to the second snowman. I used the same reds as I used on the first. And then I brought in some darker gray colors to make it look black on his hat and his shoes. And I added the green detail to his mittens. I just wanted to add a little bit of extra color since he doesn't have a lot going on. Once I had the coloring done, I went ahead and die cut them with the coordinating dies, and now we can work on the background pieces that we're going to add them to. I knew I wanted to add blue to the backgrounds to kind of give a sky look, and I want to make sure that my snowman as well as my die cut letters are going to stand out. I plan on die cutting the letters just from white cardstock because I want to keep these cards relatively simple. I want the main focus to be on the snowman images that we're going to add. I want the color to be heavier in the center and kind of fade out towards the edges, so I'm starting the ink blending right in the middle area, and I'm just using the dies as I go to kind of place it on top of the inked area to make sure I have enough of that color on there. Once I'm happy with it, I'm going to take some water and I'm going to sprinkle it over top both of these to give the ink that we have on the background a distress look. This is a really great way to kind of give the look of snow in your backgrounds because the water reacts with the ink, and you can see here that we're left with some really cool white splotches. It just adds the overall wintry feel on a card. I also love to take my water and just kind of spritz it from above, and it just releases a really fine mist of water, and that just helps to really add a lot of texture to that ink in the background. Okay, so once our backgrounds are dry, we are ready to start to assemble our card. These are very quick and easy cards. The coloring is what took the longest on both of these designs. And I love the final result because we end up with these 2 joy words, which are very different because we have the joy on the left-hand side, which is from the Filled with Joy Dynamics. And it's a little bit shorter and fatter, so I thought it went really well with this smaller snowman. And then I used the Impact Alphabet dies to cut out a J and a Y, which are very skinny and tall, so I thought they suited this guy a lot better because he's super tall and he has that really tall hat. I also really love how each of the arms of the snowman overlap the letters in the joy word. I just think it looks really cute and just adds a really cohesive look to the design and actually makes it look like they're supposed to be part of the word. So now we can start to glue everything on. I have a liquid glue pen here and I'm using that to add glue to the back of the letters. And I'm also using a T-square ruler, which is going to help me line everything up on my card front. When I add the letters to the card front, I just use that T-square ruler and line it up along the edge. and that just helps to make sure that my J and my Y are going to be at the same height since they aren't right side by side. I also made sure that I kind of had them as center as possible so that everything is kind of centered on the design, and then I laid the snowman over top to make sure he was going to fit no problem. For him, I wanted a little bit of extra dimension, so I am going to cover the back of him completely with foam adhesive, and then I'm going to add him to the card with that foam adhesive. That just helps him to stand out a little bit from the letters, and I just think it adds to the overall design, especially since we kept it very simple and plain. This little bit of dimension adds a little bit more detail to the card. So once we had the first one done, I went ahead and did the same thing with the second design, and I put the J and the Y onto our card front with the same liquid glue. And once again, I used my T-square ruler to make sure everything was lined up. When I use a letter that has kind of a loop at the bottom, it's kind of hard to tell if it's straight up and down. So I also like to put my T-square ruler in the other direction, and that just helps to line everything up. Once again, I added foam adhesive to the snowman, and I added him to the center of the word. Now you could leave these as is and call it done. You could just have the joy as the sentiment, but I decided to add a secondary sentiment under each of the snowmen as well, and I wanted to do that on black cardstock with white embossing powder. I love the contrast of having that white against the black design, and I thought it really popped against this card design when I had everything finished. Both of the sentiments I used are from the Bitty Holiday Wishes stamp set, and once I had them stamped and heat embossed, I die cut them with the Skinny Strips Dynamics. These are going to be adhered directly onto the card front, and once again I'm going to use foam adhesive just to keep them at the same height as the snowmen, and I'm just going to line them up directly under those joy words. I used my T-square ruler once again to get these centered on my designs and straight up and down, and then I'm going to add each of these card panels to a card base. So the panels measure 4 inches by 5 1/4, and my card bases measure 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2, which makes them an A2 size card. I wanted to keep everything very simple in the background, which is why I decided to do a tone-on-tone white panel against a white background. And then finally, we need to add some snow detail to the snowman as well as the background. The background snow didn't show up as dark because the background is pretty light in color, but you can definitely see the snow we added over top all of the colored areas. And that is going to complete our 2 Joyful Snowman cards. We have 2 very similar designs, but we've changed them up by changing out the letters that we used for the joy word, as well as the snowman that we added in the center. I hope today's video gave you some ideas on ways that you can mix and match your word dies along with your stamp sentiments to create some really fun festive designs. As always, I appreciate you being here for another video, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.